Good morning. Usually in these brief little talks in the morning, I've been trying to follow the scriptures which are presented to us through the lectionary for each day's worship. But I feel convicted at the moment that I should turn, for the next couple of days anyway, to look at the letters of Jesus. That's right, the letters of Jesus. Paul wrote letters, Peter wrote letters, James wrote letters. People often forget that Jesus wrote 7 letters to the church. And he dictates them to John when he was in prison on the island of Patmos. Now, you may say, well, why did Jesus write to these 7 churches? He didn't write to Jerusalem, he didn't write to Rome, he didn't write to Corinth, he didn't write to Philippi, he didn't write to Antioch. He wrote to the 7 churches which are recorded for us in the book of Revelation. But at the end of each of these churches, he says quite simply, listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches, plural. In other words, these letters, although directed to a particular church at that time, are in fact for the churches of all time. Now, one of the amazing things about these particular churches is that they don't just exist at that point of time, but they actually represent as well periods in the history of the church, from the very moment that the church was established at Pentecost, right the way through until Jesus returns, over 2,000 years. And during those 2,000 years, different traits will appear within the church. And as we examine what he says to these particular assemblies, so that it will affect what people do at different points in church history. The first church he wrote to, simply, was the church in Ephesus. Now, that's the church that John himself came from, where he was, in fact, the elder. This is where he wrote Revelation afterwards when he was released from prison. And he says to the church in Ephesus, he says, you're doing well. You've examined those who say they're apostles but are not. There's a lot of people going on at that time saying, oh, people should be circumcised, they had to keep the Jewish law, etc., etc. And he's saying, yes, I'm glad that you've rejected those so-called apostles who are not. But he says, you're keeping the faith in its purity. But, he says, I have something against you. You have lost your first love. When we become Christians, first of all, we can be very excited by our faith. We can actually be a bit overbearing. You know, there's nothing coming against a new Christian who suddenly comes up to you and you've been a vicar of the parish for the last 20 years and tries to convert you because he's so excited or she's so excited by what they've just found. The excitement overwhelms them. But then time passes. And as time passes, it just becomes normal again. And we have to be so careful of it just becoming normal. This is why I've been advising people to make sure that they pray regularly, that they ask God to refresh them. See, the water can become stale. It has to be refreshed over and over again. The more you give it away, the fresher it will remain. If it isn't given away, then it can become stale. And stale water, as you know, from any sort of pond, can suddenly attract other forms of life as well, which will live in it. Keep the water flowing. Make sure that you are telling other people about the faith. Make sure the sap is flowing. This is something we all need to do to show what it is that we believe. And Jesus says it's few criticisms on the church, but the main thing is you've done right in what you have tested those who say they are apostles but are not. But I have this against you. You're losing your first love. And this can apply to any church at any time. Just make sure it doesn't apply to you. Make sure that somehow, somewhere, you will tell somebody that you are a Christian and to make sure that they know it in order that they too may be stopped in their tracks and made to think again about what the gospel is all about. The first church, the church in Ephesus. Tomorrow I will continue. Thank you.